My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Dr. Rob Willhite is a chiropractor and myofascial release specialist out of Hermosa Beach, California. Dr. Rob works closely with athletes from the professional rankings all the way down to high school athletes. Today on the podcast, Dr. Rob enlightens us about fascia and the overall importance it has on our well-being and movement patterns. He also discusses tensegrity and goes over customized at-home exercises that can help get you out of pain. Please welcome Dr. Rob Willhite. All right, Rob. So where are you from?
I'm from Ridgecrest, California, a little small desert town in the Mojave Desert of California.
How far is that from LA?
It's about 3 hours northeast if you're going towards the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Nice. What was it like growing up there?
It's special. That's the word I'll use. Special,
Yeah?
Very special. It's a super isolated town, middle of the desert. I think the closest major city, quote unquote, we'll call it, is probably like Lancaster.
Wow.
Which is about an hour and a half away. So I grew up in a town where there was no mall. I mean, Walmart and Denny's were the hangouts. So if that gives you a little bit of an idea of where I come from, then
Yeah. So what were you into growing up? Any sports or anything?
Yeah, that was pretty much what consumed my pre-adult existence with sports. I mean, living in a place like that, there's not a whole lot to get into.
Keeps you busy.
Right. Sports is one of them, and my parents pushed that on me, and I embraced it, and definitely was what occupied most of my time outside of school.
And you were a basketball guy, right? Mostly?
Yes, sir. I played football when I was doing the whole Pop Warner thing and slowly transitioned to basketball throughout middle school and high school, and then that's what I did after high school, went to college, and played ball as well.
Nice. Where did you play ball in college?
I played at a small Division II school in Carson, California, so, just south of LA. It's a school called Cal State Dominguez Hills.
That's where that StubHub Center is, right?
Absolutely.
Is that where you guys played, or is that an outdoor?
That's an outdoor, soccer arena, soccer stadium. Well, we had our nice little, decent-sized little gym on campus, so, I mean, nothing spectacular.
Nice.
But it served its purpose.
And how was that experience for you? Did you like playing ball there? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it was definitely a great experience. Just one, getting to do something that I love to do, and getting school paid for. I mean, that was a blessing.
Of course, yeah.
Right. And then looking back at it along the way, I mean, you don't really appreciate it while you're in it, but definitely it gave me a lot of tools for life and understanding how to, manage, people above me telling me what to do as far as coaches, and then manage people on my level as far as my teammates, and trying to be a leader in that capacity. And then just, having to deal with different physical, mental hardships of going through practice, games, juggling that with school, travel, all that stuff. So definitely it helped me a lot with time management, all the things that I put into place now.
Nice.
To move forward, yeah.
Were you looking to go to the next level after college? Did you get any looks at the league or anything? Or
it was one of those things when I first started college, I was like, it'd be cool to play professional basketball. Me, I'm a realist. So I knew coming out of Division II school, and I understood what my strengths and limitations were as a basketball player. So I knew that playing in the NBA was a long shot, especially as I progressed through college. And then, throughout that grind of doing the whole college basketball thing, definitely started to see myself more in a long-term career in what I'm doing now versus basketball. So by the time my senior season of basketball ended, I was okay. I was okay with it being over. I definitely tried a few things here. I had a couple, at the time it was like D-League, NBA D-League tryouts, some overseas stuff. I definitely wanted to do that for myself. And then my dad was a big influence, and he was like, you should definitely just try and,
absolutely.
Take a crack at it. If it doesn't work out, at least you tried and you didn't just let it go. So I definitely appreciate him for pushing me to do that.
Absolutely. Well, that's fulfilling in itself. You tried it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's never in the back of your mind anymore.
Exactly.
It was done.
Definitely had peace of mind coming out of it, because then I was like, okay, I tried it, didn't work out, but now I get to do what I really want to do. And that's what we're here talking about today.
So were you getting anything in college, like chiropractic, muscle work, anything done to help you that kind of led you in that direction?
It's interesting. As a kid, and even through college, I think my first experience with a chiropractor was, I want to say maybe my junior year of basketball in college. Before that, I had gone to PT for some like ankle sprains, just the typical, athlete stuff, but never really had any experience with a chiropractor or anything in depth like that, right? So when I did, it was very eye-opening, and kind of what led me into what I'm, where we're at now is I got hooked up in college with a guy who is now my mentor. He's a chiropractor by license, but does very similar to what I do now, a lot of the soft tissue and rehab stuff. And for me, not only seeing him work and how he did his thing, but also experiencing the work that he did. For me as an athlete, it was something that's, that resonated with me really quickly. Like I said, I had been to a different chiropractor before. I had been to different PTs, and all of it was good, but it wasn't that light bulb moment that I needed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what you need. Yeah. And that's what really turns it on for yourself. And that's where the passion comes from.
Absolutely. So once I experienced that, and I was like, oh, I can take what he's doing here, incorporate my own philosophies and ideals coming from an already athletic background, incorporate some of the chiropractic stuff, some of the rehab stuff with PT. And that's kind of what I've molded into what I do today.
So he was treating you in college? That's where you found him?
Yeah, so he treated me once, maybe twice through a mutual connection, but he's a very expensive ticket. So as a college student, I couldn't, it was like a one-time, two-time deal. And after that, I was like, hey, man, can I just hang out with you? And
cool.
And that's kind of how it got started. And I just hanging out with him all throughout undergrad when I had time. And then even when we were in chiropractic school, any spare time I had, I was over there learning and just trying to figure the thing out.
It's interesting you brought that up, because I don't know anybody that's good at what they do that doesn't want somebody else. Like, a lot of people are like, what should I do? How do I get in there and talk to people? I was like, did you ask if you could follow them around and just because everybody loves giving back and sharing that experience of what they do. And you rarely people that would say no to that.
Absolutely.
It just got to get up and ask. And mostly everybody says yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hard part for most people is, like you said, getting up and asking. And it was the same for him. I was fortunate enough to come across a guy who, once I started talking to him, he asked me about what I was doing in undergrad. And I kind of told him, I'm majoring in kinesiology. I'm looking to go to PT school. And he was like, well, let me show you a different way that I do.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
He said, if you want to come hang out at any time, just come back. And for me, that was all I needed. And after that, I hopped on the train, and I started hanging out with him, kind of seeing how not only what he did in the treatment room, how he interacted with his patients, but also, his work-life balance and just, the whole gambit of everything, that went into what he was doing. And I just fell in love with it. And I told him, I said, if you'll allow me to, I'm just going to hang out with you as much as I can and do exactly what you did to get where you're at, because I want to do it.
That's what it takes, and then make it your own, and then you're golden.
Exactly.
So you shadowed him a lot in chiropractic school?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime that I had, obviously, there's not a lot of free time when you're in school. But especially as I got more and more into, 8th, 9th, 10th term, where we had some time where we're out in the field and doing whatnot, I made it a point to go over there and hang out with him at his clinic, help him as much as possible, add value to what he was doing while I gained experience. And then what we would do is he was nice enough to set up, I think we did it once a week, twice a week at max, where I would go to his house and we'd spend about 3-4 hours, and we'd have other people come over, and he would just, teach me. He would just, train me in all the soft tissue techniques that he's kind of developed over the years. And like you said, I latched onto that stuff and then added what I knew as an athlete and all the other stuff that I had gone outside of what he had showed me. I just kind of incorporated my own twist on it.
So, Rob, you specialize in myofascial work, soft tissue. Can you go into how important fascia is and how it's kind of becoming a new focus of what a lot of people are focusing on and why it's so important?
Yeah, man. Let's try and make this as streamlined as possible, because there's a lot to talk about.
First of all, what is it? What is fascia?
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's where we'll start. The way that I describe the fascia to patients and people when I'm, doing the education bit is that the best way to describe it and the easiest way to describe it is fascia is very similar to that weird casing around sausages. So it contained, it's what holds all the contents of the sausage together. But not only that, it's connecting sausage link to sausage link. And if you can imagine the muscle being the sausage and then the fascia being that outer casing, we got, depending on what functional lines that we're talking about, you have different muscles that are connected in function by this fascia, this outer casing. You know what I mean? So it's definitely one of those things when you're talking about going into actual functional movements, especially like for me working with athletes or the athletic population. When I go to, deduce and diagnose and do my investigation on why someone's in pain or they have an injury, I'm looking all across these fascial lines because maybe there's an injury in the knee, but there's all these different, sausage links that are involved. So maybe it's not just sausage link number 1. It might be sausage link number 5, 6, 7 down the line that could be, adding to that. So, and that's what the fascia does again. It just connects all these different muscles and muscle groups together in that functional way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how do you go about working with it and assessing which quote unquote sausage link is tighter than the other and all that stuff?
Well, one of the most important books that I got a hold of in chiropractic school, which kind of, helps me a lot when I go into doing the diagnosis of a patient and figuring out not just where their pain is, but what's the primary cause of their pain, is a book called Anatomy Trains by Tom Myers. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's great. And again, it just gives me a blueprint. So, I know now from experience and from, the different education I got from chiropractic school, different books that I read outside, education from my mentor, when I see a certain injury in a place, like we'll just stick with the knee, there's a couple places, that I go outside of the knee, those primarily being the hip and the ankle, or the hip and the ankle and the foot, as contributing factors to added stress on the knee or different biomechanical factors that go into that. So, when I'm looking at it, like you said, which sausage link to pick, I'm seeing where the pain is. And then I have, like I said, a blueprint from all the education, especially that Anatomy Trains book, to other muscles along that fascial train that I'm going to go look and I'm going to see, okay, do you have the mobility here in your hip? If we're sticking with the knee, do you have the mobility here in your hip? Do you have the mobility here in your ankle? Do you have the structural foundation in your foot? Why is it that there's extra stress being put on your knee?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the blueprint that I go with throughout the whole body.
So I have a question for you. How often do you see that? So say someone's got right hip pain. How often do you see that the root cause of the problem's at the right hip? Or do you see it pop up in the shoulder or the ankle or other spots like that?
Oh, man, it's almost, I would say on the conservative side of things, I would probably say 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
It's going to be somewhere other than that hip. And that kind of plays along to another premise of the Anatomy Trains book and the whole fascial system is this buzzword that people use nowadays and that they coined is called tensegrity. Yeah. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about tensegrity before. And that's just, the two words tensile and integrity combined to kind of describe how the human body works as far as absorbing forces and transmitting forces. And a big part of that is the way, I guess the easiest way that I describe it in the most simple, fundamental way that you could describe it is imagining the human body like a balloon, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have, the same amount of tension across this balloon from the inside. And anytime you put any type of force compression into the balloon, it's going to be transmitted all along that surface, right? And the human body is very similar. Again, and this is the most basic, easy, foundational way to put it, but there's obviously way more that goes into it. But, the human body is very similar. When you put a force in it, whether it's, running, jumping, even something as simple as sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day at work, all these, whether it's macro trauma, micro trauma, any forces that you're putting in is going to be transmitted throughout this system to hold that tensile integrity, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a lot of the times, to go back to the whole point of this, is that if there's a constant, force or, anything like that that's being put into one part of the body, it happens a lot with athletes who are, positional. If you're a pitcher,
very true. Yeah.
Certain forces that are constantly at play, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes as if on the other side of the spectrum, if you're sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, you're going to get the same type of forces and the same type of, micro traumas on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Eventually, just like if I took a ballpoint pen on the blunt side and I'm constantly pressing down in that balloon, eventually that balloon's going to pop.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is that balloon doesn't necessarily pop where I'm pushing that pen. It's going to be somewhere else in a weak point that has given out before the actual point of force. And that's how
that's a great analogy. Yeah. So now that we know what fascia is, there's hundreds of different types of therapy that goes into it. So what do you mainly focus on and how do you go about treating just the fascia and the tightness and everything?
Right. So that's the interesting part, is because there's a lot of people with the idea that the fascia is important, right? And just like you said, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go about treating it. There's ART over here, there's Rolfing over here, there's all the structural integration, there's all these different ways to do it. For me personally, what I found to work, and this is just from my own experience as an athlete, and then moving into my experience as a patient with my mentor and then learning from him as a mentee, the way that I look to treat it is based on a lot of research by a guy named Robert Schleip, where he's done a lot of, again, just research with the fascia and how it responds to different forces and impulses and all that stuff. And what he has found in his research is that deep, slow pressure. So we're talking about the best way I can describe it. It looks like deep tissue massage, but it's extremely deep pressure. And it moves very slowly. And with this type of pressure, it's stimulating certain proprioceptors in the skin, in the fascial layer especially, that what ends up happening when these proprioceptors are being stimulated, the research has shown that it basically stimulates the endocrine system and the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system to be more specific, to have this global relaxing effect. I guess that's the best way to put it, to where you're decreasing the tone of the muscle. You know what I mean?
Do you feel the tensegrity change? Like, do you wait for like a release when you're doing that slow therapy, or does it sometimes take like a couple hours after the treat? How do you know when you got it, per se?
Right. And, that's kind of the hard part, and that's what comes with experience. But for sure, there's definitely going to be times where you feel that release,
Yeah.
And that's exciting stuff because you can feel it, the patient can feel it, and it's like an immediate result.
Yeah.
On the more common side of things, it's one of those things where, especially with how deep and slow that it's going, it's very uncomfortable for the patient.
Yeah.
And so people don't love me while I'm doing it, but they do later, right?
Yeah.
So it is more of one of those things where it's like, we do the work, you definitely feel different immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you really get to appreciate the work is a couple of days later, when you start to feel all that stuff just kind of relaxed and, let go, and you definitely feel more mobility and you feel a lot of that tension, like I said, in the muscles, in the fascial system kind of just decrease, and you get that a little bit more range of motion, less pain. That's when the payoff comes. Yeah.
So after you fix the tensegrity, do you find that you have to fix that athlete's ergonomics of what they're doing? Because if they go back to playing the same way they were, that's probably just going to come right back, right?
Yes, and that's a great point, man. And that's one of the other half of what I preach to all my patients is that, again, I'm big into analogies because that's the best way people just can understand it, right? So my analogy that I use with everybody is that, it's almost like you have this house that you built over years. We need to tear that house down with our soft tissue work, and then we need to build it back up from the foundation with, rehab exercise. So another big part of that, and just to go exactly with what you're asking, is that a big part of that is after we've done the tissue work, we need to see what's going on biomechanically and almost re-educate that fascial train or that muscle system to work properly so we can build that foundation on solid ground instead of this haphazard deal that we've got going on right now.
So it's probably very beneficial for someone to visit you in the off season while you have time to do that. I mean, obviously you'll see someone mid-season, but the chances of them changing everything mid-season is tough, but they could definitely probably do it on the off-season, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, during season, more of the work that we're going to do is going to be more of the soft tissue work just because of what you just said, that there's not a lot of time to re-educate those systems. So a lot of what we do is just going to be more for just tissue quality, tissue health, making sure they're staying out of pain and making sure that they can, perform their job, whatever it may be, at the best of their abilities pain-free. Off-season, just like you said, is where we're going to go down and we're going to just tear that house down and rebuild it. That's when we have the time and it can take the time to do that.
Yeah. Another thing I like that you're doing is you make videos for people where they can literally become their own doctor. After you assess what's going on, you give them at-home exercises, right? Or things that they can do to help them keep the tensegrity and everything, right?
Absolutely. And that's probably the most fun part about what I do is the education part. That's kind of more where my passion is I do love helping people, but I love to make sure that people can help themselves as well.
Absolutely.
What I mean? And so the main goal in everything that I do, obviously, is to get people out of pain, but I want to keep people out of pain and I want them to be dependent on anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just like you touched on, the videos that I make I will never give somebody a video of something that they can do without telling them why they're doing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I want to make sure that everyone going forward, whether they're with me or it's via Instagram, is that they understand if they have an injury, they understand why they have that injury, or most likely. I don't get to, assess everyone who's watching my videos, obviously. So I want to give them an idea of why these certain injuries happen, and then moving forward, how you can get out of pain, and then how we can stay out of pain.
Definitely. So how do you feel that the training, has it come a long way with like athletes today? Because I remember when I was doing training and everything, they would have 40 kids in one room doing the same exact thing, which I mean, some kids shouldn't have been doing deadlifts and squats and all this stuff. And some kids had awful knees and everything. So how do you go about correcting that? Or just, you obviously want the whole team involved, but you don't want anybody getting hurt.
Yeah, and that's definitely a tricky subject moving forward, especially because I'm working with a lot of trainers and strength coaches, personal trainers, strength coaches, the whole bit, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing is that, just like you said, if you're going into a team setting where you got 40 kids in the weight room and they're all on the same program, that's not going to work.
No, it's not.
Everyone has their imbalances, and a lot of the times these programs just build on those imbalances, especially if you're in a weight room or training room with all your teammates. You don't want to be the guy who can't deadlift. You know what I mean? You're going to tweak your back or your feet or any way that you can to make sure you get the job done, right?
Yeah.
Which in the long term is going to be detrimental. And that's what we see, the combination of that and then how much kids play particular sports or specialize in a particular sport so early. All the sports that these kids are doing nowadays are year round. There's no break anymore. There's no break. There's between your school team, your club team, your trainer. There's no break. And these kids, and what happens is you see kids, baseball players with Tommy John surgery at 16, torn ACLs with basketball players at 12. It's crazy. Tendonitis, all these different overuse injuries. And to go back to what you're saying is that a lot of that, the combination of poor training, or I won't even call it poor training, I'll call it unspecialized training, and the volume with which these kids are playing their sports is contributing to a lot of the unnecessary injuries. And if there was a better way, which there is, and I have a great resource that I work very closely with, he's one of my best friends, he has taken the training and added not only a component from an actual athlete's point of view, but from a physics point of view. And it's a lot better way for the soft tissues, for the joints. It's not so much of the traditional stuff. And that could be on a whole nother podcast. But to answer your question, the training that we have nowadays is archaic and almost medieval. And we have to start moving towards a training system that is more research-based, more advanced for understanding how the body takes in those forces and the tensegrity model and all that stuff. Because a lot of what we do now in the training room is based on building muscles. And as we start looking at an athlete and what an athlete does, especially as I look at it from an injury standpoint, it's not so much that we need to be worried about strengthening certain muscles, but we need to be strengthening certain fascial functional lines. And that's what makes the athletes the best. And on top of that, if you're training the right way, in that way, you're going to reduce your risk of injury.
Definitely. And so do you encourage kids that you work to play a couple sports all year round, or maybe just, it's tough because to get to that next level today, everybody's working so hard that you almost have to, but there does come a point where you're like, it's got to be fun too. So, I mean, how do you tell those kids to balance that? Even the parents, I'm sure the parents need to hear that too.
Absolutely. The coolest thing about that whole situation is I was one of those kids, where I was playing high school club. I was driving from my hometown, which is 3 hours from LA. I was driving to LA every weekend so I could play for my club team. So, there was no break. You know what I mean? So I know that as a kid, if you're not working hard as the guy next to you, then you feel like, what, he's doing more than me and I'm not going to make the team and I'm not going to get playing time. I'm not going to go to the NBA or whatever, highest level of sport you're trying to achieve. But again, there's definitely a point to where you get, these diminishing returns, right?
Absolutely.
So what I encourage a lot of the kids to do is, because for me in working with athletes, the last thing I want to tell them to do is stop playing their sport or decrease playing their sport. Because I know it's not realistic. I was there. You know what I mean? I know how it goes. So what I like to do is, and that's a big part of the reason I do everything that I do on social media and Instagram especially, is that, I want kids to, along this way, understand if they're going to be playing this much of one sport from this early on, you got to take the precautionary measures to take care of your body. Because I don't know about you, Kev, but for me, when I was playing sports growing up, I never stretched. I stretched when the coaches told me to, but half the time I was kind of, BSing the whole time. I would do the most BS stretches, like 5 minutes before the game. Probably made it worse. Right, exactly. And so, I didn't know what a foam roller was. You know what I mean? I didn't know what foundational exercises. I didn't know what activated this before I play would do for me. And again, so that's kind of my whole premise in my social media, is to just push onto kids and educate them in the importance of doing all the little things along the way that will not only reduce your risk of injury as you're moving forward, especially playing, with this high volume of sport that we got nowadays. But also, a lot of this stuff, you talk about loosening your hips, getting your feet and ankles mobile, and strengthening all that stuff through a full range of motion. I mean, that's going to make you a better athlete at the end of the day.
Definitely.
So it's a double-edged sword. You're not going to get hurt as much and you're going to be better.
Yeah.
Physically. So, and that's kind of what I try and push on. So to answer your question, I don't necessarily tell them to stop playing one sport or take a break or even, play different sports. I mean, it would be nice if you could take a break. But again, I understand the mind of an athlete. And like you touched on, especially the parents, if they're pushing them to get a college scholarship,
Yeah.
So I don't even go that route. I just say, okay, here's the things that you need to do along the way. If this is the life you want to lead, this is what you need to do to maintain. You know.
So, Rob, how often do you like to see your clients? And I know it's different for everybody depending on what they're going through, but how long is a session usually?
Yeah. So for me, I see all my patients for an hour, one-on-one for an hour. And typically, like I kind of touched on the intensity of the work that we're doing in that hour, I usually, in the worst cases, I'll see somebody twice a week, but never more than that. Usually it's once a week and we have them on a regimen. And again, like we touched on before, is in that week's time, they definitely have homework to go home and work on. So a lot of their trajectory of how quickly they get out of pain, increase their mobility, whatever it is that our goal is going to be dependent on how diligent they are with their homework. So that's the way that one works. Yeah.
And then, so obviously, if you're in the LA area, go see Rob, obviously. But what would you what about a kid in Florida or something? What should he seek out? He's like, you know what, I'm not doing well physically, and he's a top athlete. What can they do to just seek out? Obviously, they can watch some videos, but what would what's your advice for them?
It's very hard that's a tough question to answer because I know there's so many variables that go into that.
Yeah.
I would say more than anything, find a practitioner, whether it's a doctor or a massage therapist, whatever, trainer, whatever it may be. Find someone who's going to take the time to understand your issue and not just kind of run you through this
patient mill. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what I pride my whole practice on is, like I said, being able to sit down with someone for an hour and fully go through what we're doing. It's not like I'm in and out of the room. It's like, okay, boom, this is me in your time. Let's figure this thing out. And if you could find a doctor, it might come at a higher price tag, but it's always going to be worth it. I guarantee you.
Definitely.
Someone who can just sit down and try and figure out what's going on with you. And if they can't help you, they'll at least put a plan together or put you in the right situation, whether it may be with someone else, to get you right. So that would probably be my biggest bit of advice.
Gotcha. And Rob, are you sports specific? Are you just basketball, or are you seeing athletes all across the board?
Oh, all across the board. So basketball, obviously, that was my sport. So I got some basketball players, got quite a bit of football players, volleyball, gymnastics, swimmers, jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, boxing. I mean, all across the board.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, what are your social media platforms where people can find your videos and check out what you're doing?
I would say the easiest one would be my Instagram page. I mean, that's where most of my stuff goes. And again, I try and obviously all the videos are a minute long. Try and keep the captions pretty short so people don't get bored. I know people don't want to read.
Exactly. What's your Instagram name?
It's at Dr. Rob. So Dr__R, the number 0, and then B.
Gotcha. Okay. And then are you on YouTube or anything, or we strictly Instagram right now?
Strictly Instagram right now. People can get a lot of the stuff that I want them to have for right now on there. Yeah. But definitely in the works for bigger and better things. Hopefully that'll get going by the end of the year and a more expansive library of knowledge to pull from. So.
All right. Well, Rob, thanks for coming on, man. That was awesome. Always a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And maybe in a couple months, we'll get you back here, see what you're up to, and seeing a lot of big things coming your way.
Hey, man, I'd love to do that. Hey, anytime you'll have me, I'll get on here and ramble a little bit.
Absolutely, Rob. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon, and thanks for coming on.
Okay, thanks, Kev. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. My private practice is located in New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. If you have any additional questions about today's podcast, other episodes, or any questions about Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic in general, feel free to visit my website at drkevinpecca.com or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca. Hope you enjoyed the show. Cheers.